So to hop into this conversation, I'm going to bring in Natalie Held. She's incredible. She's all about pink, politics, and pop culture. She does so many things. She works in content creation and management for the Hermana Agency, and then on top of that, being a social editor for Let's Fucking Date. She's basically the queen of superfan strategy, and I cannot do her justice with this intro, but I'm sure we'll break it down even more. So welcome to the show. Hello, Natalie.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So just for people who don't know who you are, I know it's the typical like, who are you? What do you do? But kind of where did you get started in kind of what you do now, and like what got you to be a fan of like being fans of people?
Yeah, so I think originally, when I was younger, specifically like in middle school, I felt super isolated. I was bullied a lot for just like being super passionate about different things, primarily like music and just always being in my phone. And so I remember initially joining Twitter just to kind of find community. And that ended up just spiraling into finding people that had the same interests as me, primarily the same music taste as me. And so that's kind of when One Direction was up and coming. And then I found The Cab and then some other bands and artists like The Somerset, Ed Sheeran, Halsey, The Neighborhood, as it goes. So I really just kind of found my passion and community through kind of craving connection with other people outside of my physical space.
100%. And you mentioned the Cab first and the Somerset, first of all. Both of them are coming back, which is
I know.
I never would have guessed that in this year. I mean, it's very exciting for me. I was a huge fan of the Somerset when I was growing up. So when they were like coming up, I was like, oh, excuse me? This is not happening. This is like not what I expected on my bingo card. So how did that kind of happen? I know you're friends with Alex from the Cab, and I think that is incredible. And for a lot of people who are like in their like younger teens, I think that that is almost unheard of until you obviously like reach a certain point in your life where you are like kind of able to create those connections that are meaningful, other than just like a fan connection. So how did that kind of happen for you?
Yeah, I think this is just like a very like fan fiction trajectory that I think if I think too hard about, I can't like it's overwhelming. I feel super fortunate with my relationship with Alex, and the way it kind of started was through these online communities and through fandom, and I ended up just kind of befriending some of the older girls in the fandom, like girls that had been there since like the MySpace days and had been to a million shows and would always see the band and talk with Alex. And so they kind of had their own little tight knit family, and they were like so kind and generous enough to kind of bring me into that. So then I became like the littlest one in this family, became very quickly like a little sister to a lot of them. And then from there, they would kind of like talk about me to Alex. Alex would see me online, he'd tweet me back and forth, and then this would go on for like quite a few months, and then eventually he followed me. He was living in LA at the time, and this was like 2013, and the VMAs were being held in New York. So I'm from Connecticut. I live like an hour outside of New York. So I was like, oh my God, like I'm finally gonna meet Alex. He did like a little meetup in Central Park. So I got to meet him. I got to meet a lot of these girls. Obviously, I was with my dad because I'm literally 13 years old. I ended up going to lunch with some of the girls afterwards, and like my dad was kind of skeptical. He's like, "This is so weird. Like my daughter's talking to these strangers online. Like, what is this like?" But something that like has always stuck out to me is after like I went to dinner with all these girls, he just kind of like said to me, he's like, "I trust you," and like I trust them, and like that's kind of when I'd get to go to shows with like these older friends of mine because like there was this level of trust. And then the next day after I met Alex, I ended up going to lunch with him and my dad. And for like 4 hours, I just got to like sit there and listen to all the projects he was working on and just like get the inside scoop into like what his life was like and the things that like I didn't know outside of what these older girls told me from their stories or like from what he would tweet me online. So it was like a very like crazy moment because you never expect that to happen with your favorite artist. And then ever since then, so this was like 2013, and now we're like 2021, which is crazy. And just through the years, he's always been like an older brother to me. And I think that's such a powerful and important dynamic. And I think he's really, him and these older girls have been such role models, in the sense of empowerment for me to kind of become the person that I am, to pursue the passions that I do. And I think just as much as I think of Alex and these girls as family, I know that they do as that he does and they do as well. And I think for like kind of like a full circle moment too, this past June I went to LA for the first time, and Alex had just moved back, and a lot of these girls live in LA now. And so I got to meet some internet friends for the very first time that I've literally known them for a decade, which is crazy. And I got to catch up with Alex. We got coffee, we drove around, and there was just kind of like a moment that stuck out to me where we were in his car, just like driving through the hills, and he was just playing some demos, and we're catching up on life. And I just kind of sat there, and his arms on the steering wheel, and I just like look over to my left, and I have this view, and we're just like listening to this unreleased stuff, and I'm just like, this is everything 13-year-old Natalie could have ever wanted, and it's just so overwhelming to think about. I just feel so fortunate to kind of have his friendship and to kind of have him like always be like a guiding force in my life. And one of the things that he's always like said to me, it was like a tweet from like 2013 or 2014, was "Chin to the stars, kid." And so when I graduated high school, my parents got him to write it out for me, in his handwriting. So I have it on my pillowcase, and like I sleep on it every night, and then I'll eventually get it tattooed on me too. But I just think it's such a incredible story, and I love telling it because I think it's like such a testament to the power of like just connection and music, and how it can be so inspiring and empowering and bring people together.
Yeah, and I think that kind of shows the importance of fan engagement, and like that is on the most like minuscule level.
Yeah.
Because when he thinks about fans, I'm sure that you come to his mind and you're like, okay, she's one that like is not only, but she's a friend. And
Yeah, and I think that's the best part too, is like you build that relationship as a fan but also a friend. So like he'll come to me and like ask things about the cab, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. Or like even when I flew back to LA after I left, because he launched a new music project, and I wanted to be at the launch party, and I was like, I'm just gonna fly back, and I did it. And I reconnected with his manager and was like just like talking with him, and he was just asking me what I've been up to, and I told him, and he's like, like the guys might be looking for social stuff. So I was like, let me know, and that'd be like a total full circle moment too.
Yeah.
A dream.
So looking at your TikTok, I mentioned Terry saw this a little bit earlier. How first of all, you had like one TikTok that kind of popped off, if I believe it was like the FaceTiming your relative, and it was clearly Harry Styles, which is hilarious. How in your opinion, because I know you've been a fan of One Direction for a while, how have you seen their growth on there? Obviously they're still on hiatus, we're waiting for a comeback, it's fine. How have you seen their growth? I kind of see it in a way that it's given them a second life, and I don't think that they would be as popular. I mean, Harry Styles as their solo careers, I think 100% would be, but as like the album 4 and Made in the AM, like I don't think they would have had as much of a resurgence without TikTok. So I'm curious of your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I think I totally agree with what you said about the platform giving them a second life, and I just think that's so interesting and so cool. I think it's crazy to see new fans like still emerging today post hiatus. But I think it's, again, like going back to community and fandom, like I think it's just such a testament to the kind of culture that One Direction created. And I think an indirect effect of One Direction is that it created a permanent bond within all of us, and like we still have all these friendships to this day. Like I know there are people that maybe I haven't talked to in a couple months, but if I were to text them or tweet them, it'd be like no time has passed, because we've kind of have this like unbreakable bond because we've just followed each other and known each other for so many years, whether we've met in person or not. And I feel like we could both probably confidently say that like 11 years later, and they probably have more fans than ever because of TikTok.
Absolutely.
So I think it's like such an interesting thing to think about. And I think that it's not just TikTok per se. I think if there was any new social media platform that were to emerge, that the same thing would happen. If it was like a Vine resurgence or like a totally new app that we can't even think of right now, just because again, the kind of community and culture that they created. But at the same time, I think these new fans are creating it in a different way. So the way that we experienced it in real time, they have like a sense of like nostalgia or like yearning for that kind of experience because they never got it. And so in that way, they have like a different perspective of the band and like what that community is like now. So I think it'll be really interesting when there is a reunion to kind of have these waves of fans come together. Oh, it'll happen. just to kind of like see these waves of fans like come together and just like sell out an arena in 0.2 seconds.
Point one, probably.
Yeah, literally. And I think what's really interesting too is like when we look at like standum today, because obviously the word stan wasn't around One
Right.
Direction era. I feel like One Direction, and like this might be controversial because obviously there's other boy bands before this, but I think it's safe to say that One Direction was like the first boy band to like really explode into social media in the way that we see social media today. Like they were truly the blueprint when it comes to like update accounts, fan accounts, insiders, fan projects. And I think it's so
Mm-hmm.
cool to see like other fans of other artists doing the same things now, whether it's a band or a solo act or whatever, and kind of like innovating that. And I think I really
Yeah.
love BTS stands especially because of just like how like the magnitude of them, but also the really cool things that they've done like on TikTok with the Trump rally and buying the ticket so there's empty seats. Like it's just really cool stuff that I'd be so interested to see like how this would evolve if One Direction were to come back and to see if there'd be like a political or like social justice lens because I know so many like young women that were in fandoms specifically like One Direction or Taylor Swift and like other like large fandoms that now work in like organizing spaces, whether it's like nonprofits or politics, and so they've used their online skills to go into that. So it'd be really cool to see if like these women come back and like go on tour and stuff, like what cool fan projects could emerge from that. So it's like it's really cool to see, and I'm really excited for it.
I don't know if you've seen on TikTok, but there is like two fan projects for Harry Styles tour right now, which are like insane. One of them made an app, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then the other one was like documenting everything. And I'm just like, this is like insane because, so I graduated high school in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So the last time I saw One Direction live was 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was 17, 16, 17. And like the amount of growth I personally have had and
Yeah.
like thinking about people and I'm just like these people are like I mean I'm doing like a very creative career so I won't like include myself in this but like people are making apps like they
Yeah.
can just casually do that on the weekends. Like, oh, this is like me. I'll be like, oh, I'll make a podcast. I'll make like a cool little like sticker. But like, no,
It's
like a
so
whole
crazy.
app. A,
It's insane, and like we're all like like pretty much established in what we're doing. So it'll
right,
just be so cool of like what we'll collectively do.
right. So, do you remember how you found One Direction?
I'm always asked this, and I can't. It must have just been like word of mouth, radio play, but I was never into the Jonas Brothers. I was never like, I just grew up listening to like the music that my parents did. So, like, I don't know, like U2, Duran Duran, like Stones, like all the old stuff. Um, but One Direction, like, there was just something about it. It might have been the perfect storm of like, I'm like 12 years old and like going through puberty, like these hot boys and their friends.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it must have just been like word of mouth and radio play. And I was just like, oh, and then YouTube, and you're like, oh.
It's so funny to me asking people that question, like even people I've like known for years and like, oh, you like One Direction? Oh, by the way, I do too.
Mhm.
And it's just so interesting because I remember specifically like scrolling through Tumblr and seeing the first post and it
Oh
was
my
the like second X Factor performance and I was like, what the fuck am I watching? And then it was obviously like a downward slash upward spiral from there.
Right.
And I think that you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but like the bonds that have been created over the
Mm-hmm.
years are insane because when I was a freshman in college, oh my god, you're gonna love this. I was in like this leadership retreat, and we all like got to like college like a week early, and then we did the retreat, and then it was like move in early, and I was like, okay, cool, that's why I'm doing it. And then we all are in this like very large like meeting room, and we're just chatting, and then all of a sudden like the girl next to me and I were just like, oh yeah, like One Direction, like, because you don't know like how people are going to react when you say that,
Right.
which is unfortunate. I think now it's very much more positive, but
Yeah.
back then it was like they had just like Zayn had like left the band, and then it was like you didn't know what was going to happen from there,
Right.
and we both had this thing. It was like what, and then this is what we talked about: the Harry Styles picture with a koala, and how there was a rumor about him having chlamydia. That is what we talked about.
It's
Like
like you remember these like vivid moments. It's so true though.
And it's just like that, I think, is just like the perfect example of like, oh, now she's like my best friend in the
Right.
entire world. And,
How it goes.
yeah. And it's just like, those are just things that like you can't replicate anywhere else, in my opinion. And even not even like bigger bands like One Direction, but like smaller bands. I mean, when I was really into the Somerset in middle school, it was like, I changed my Twitter handle to Half Moon Alley, and it was like a whole thing. And it just blows my mind. And you are working in so many things, and you've taken every fan skill essentially and monetized it, and really made it into who you are
Yeah.
as a quote unquote adult, and like a
Loose.
professional, and all of these things. And I mean that in the best way. So can you kind of talk about how that transition happened for you, and like if you've had any experience being considered like a fangirl in like a professional environment, and kind of your whole professional career as it looks in that lens?
Yeah, so I think you said it pretty well. Like I think every skill that I've developed like through being a fan has directly translated to like all the things I've done. So like I've already taken like a few career paths, but like I feel like all my organizing skills and just skills that I learned from being a fangirl directly like translated to that. So like digital organizing, mobilization, community engagement, like these were really like key things that helped me when I was the director of communications for an elected official here in Boston. So I did that for a year, and I just kind of realized, like I said before, how like synonymous being a fangirl and an organizer is. And so like a lot of my friends in politics do come from these fan spaces because it's really valuable to online and in real life organizing. And like since then I've pivoted from politics, and so now I work at an influencer agency and at Let's Fucking Date, which is like a Instagram live reality show and sex and dating company. And I've just kind of developed these skills to work in Instagram and TikTok marketing to build a super fan engagement for Let's Fucking Date. I even like what was so crazy is at the influencer agency, one of our clients was Calm, and I never thought that like having an understanding of like the Harry Styles niche on TikTok would be useful career wise, but here we are. So I think it's like really key to like hone in on these skills because they really are transferable to anywhere you want to go. And like I really stand by that because I have yet to like encounter an industry where like these kinds of things aren't going to happen. Because when you think about it, being a fangirl, like while it may still have that negative connotation, this really is community organizing and networking and people skills, and that's never not going to be useful in anywhere that you go.
Right.
So I personally like haven't encountered like any kind of stigma with that. I feel really fortunate to be working with like young women that like get it and understand it. And I think that actually being a fangirl in these spaces has helped me because it's been pop culture knowledge, it's been trend hunting for clients. And I remember even like being on a call with one of my boss's friends who like does like Halsey stuff with like fan engagement and marketing. And I remember being on a call with her and we were like talking about fan strategy, and I was like saying all these things, and she's like, yeah, like that's a really good idea. And so not only was that incredibly validating,
Yeah.
like it made me realize that like I can be a fangirl and I can be in the room saying these things and be taken seriously, which is really nice.
Yeah. And just your personal opinion, why do you think that there is a negative connotation still lingering about being a fangirl?
um, it's blatant misogyny and sexism, full stop. I
Period.
will stand by that.
Yeah.
I think we want to think of young, passionate women as crazy and frivolous as a way to dismiss them and their talent. We look at guys burning down cities and crying after sports games, whether their team wins or loses. And we're very quick to categorize that as just boys being boys. But when girls are screaming and crying over their favorite artists, and we can even date this back to the Beatles, because the whole Beatlemania and the hysteria of women, these women are just insane. And it's obviously a bullshit double standard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the professional world that a lot of people kind of still have this mindset, and there is still kind of like this dirty word of being a fangirl, and that people still have this idea that they're like crazy obsessive people rather than these brilliant forward-thinking thought leaders and future CMOs. But I think we are starting to like shift away from this, which is really cool to see. And like you said, like it's not taboo anymore to say that like you were a fan of One Direction. Like it's cool now. Like it's cool to be a fan of One Direction. So I think it's like a really interesting culture shift. I'm excited to see where that goes.
I'm very curious to see the next 10 years in the music industry because of all of these people who aren't older white men are coming up and growing and leading and doing all of these things. So what do you think the music industry, or how do you think the music industry would differ if it was ran by solely fangirls?
Yeah. I mean, I'd argue right now, in a way, they already are running it. They're the ones that are driving the streams and sales. They're the ones that are being the marketers are online. And I think that if they were in these positions that you just talked about, we'd see these brilliant marketing campaigns. We'd see genius merch designed by and for fans. We'd see super great creative assets, fan engagement projects and activities and activations, and just so much more, like I said, that'd be organized by and for fans. And I think what's so interesting, and obviously I speak as someone who hasn't worked in the industry, but outside looking in, from what I've heard from you and friends, what I think is so interesting is that in every other field, there are experts that are like recruited to sit on these exec teams to figure out the best way to sell their product or reach their audience effectively or whatever their goal may be to reach the consumer. Yet somehow in the music industry, it kind of seems as though like the very people that they're trying to cater to are trying to cater to aren't like getting a seat at the table, let alone greeted at the door. So I think if we're really about building the fan engagement experience, I think it's time to like have these focus groups and talk to fans and listen to super fans and really pay attention to what they're creating themselves and how you can implement that into your marketing. And I think Harry Styles said it best when he said that fangirls are the future. And I think it's really cool to see artists like Lil Nas, who's like doing his marketing stuff and how he really taps into like meme culture and trends and is a trendsetter himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that is just the key to the future of the industry.
100%. I chef's kiss on everything you just said. I think the merch example is the prime example. I mean, Harry Styles is on his tour. The merch is subpar, but there are these amazing people creating merch that, you know, is way better. And if they had people like them or them on their team, the amount of money that Harry Styles would make would be astronomical, or well, it's already astronomical, but it would be tenfold because you're able to, you know, create these things with the fans, you know, that they like, and it's just like a snowball effect of just more money for them.
Exactly. And I think what's so interesting too, and particularly the reason why I love having my background in politics is because when you think of politics, like, yes, it's like the field itself, but then there's the politics of, and it's of whatever industry you're in. And so when you think about the politics of the music industry, there's obviously red tape and reasons why these aren't happening.
Right.
But the reason that I went into politics is because I wanted to like do grassroots organizing and to work with candidates that were up and coming. And so I think it's really interesting to see like the politics of the music industry and how like maybe there isn't that community engagement and that grassroots movement to be engaging with these fans to like hire them to do their merch or to buy their designs and like have them sell that. So I feel like just overall, again, like in any industry, you need to just be listening to the fan, you need to be listening to the consumer, listening to the constituent, because at the end of the day, like, this is networking. This is people talking. Like you have to listen to the people.
And I want to talk about connection of fans. How do you think that these communities have impacted people during the pandemic, and specifically when it comes to social interactions that were taken away? I think about specifically my niece. She's 12, and how much I was talking to people and doing all these things when I was 12, and like in the last like 2 years, she hasn't had that. So looking at TikTok, One Direction, whatever other artist, musician community, how do you think that that has impacted these interactions?
Yeah, I mean, I totally fell back down the One Direction and Harry rabbit hole over quarantine. I think we all just kind of clung to this like sense of comfort and nostalgia and a way to still feel connected to community when we didn't really have community. And so I feel like having online communities really filled that void for us perfectly. And I think that quarantine also allowed us to like regress, maybe like it's not a regression, but kind of go back to these passions for a sense of comfort and security, and realize that like this isn't something that we like need to hide or be ashamed of anymore. Like it's not something that like we need to like, oh my gosh, you have a fan account, like oh my god, like it's not a crazy thing. And I think what's really cool too is like meeting the moment with this as well. Like we've seen how like fandom and politics have collided this past year, especially with TikTok and like
Mm-hmm.
BTS fans, like I said earlier. And I've actually worked on some super fan engagement projects with some friends, and one of the ones that we did was to kind of meet the political moment. And so we mobilized fans to take action, and we raised and donated like almost maybe over $6,000 to like progressive orgs, and it was just like a really cool way to like use the current time to like mobilize community and fans and organizing in like a time of crisis. And so I think it was like a really great way to kind of like fill that void of like not having like feeling helpless in terms of like not being able to do anything in person because we're in a pandemic, there's civil unrest, and like wanting to do something about it, but also like tying in your passions of like online communities and fandom. So I feel like it's a really cool way to kind of bridge those together.
100%. Um, and looking at fan engagement as a whole, so thinking as a fan, and we can answer this both ways, as a fan and then also as somebody in the industry as social, doing social, a lot of social work and stuff like that, social media work, not so, I mean, maybe you do social work, but thinking of that as a fan, what has resonated most with you in your years of being a fan that a band artist community has done?
Mm, it's a good question.
Sorry, I like blindsided you with that one.
No, it's fine. Um, I think just like the most impact is just like seeing the magnitude of what fans can do. Like I think of fan projects and I think of the work that goes into just running stan accounts, to pushing marketing, to pushing sales, to getting those number ones. I just think it's really cool to see that happen. Like that's just doing it out of passion and love and dedication. So I feel like that's always like the most profound thing to me.
And with passion and a lot of fans, I'm trying to think of an example that's not hairstyles, basically. But that's just what we're gonna go with. I'm curious of, and this is me speaking out loud as myself too. Is right now Harry Styles gets a lot of free press just from fans. So does One Direction. One Direction is no longer like apparently no longer verified on Twitter, and but yet like they're still relevant. I know it's hilarious. So I'm curious of your thoughts, and I'd love to talk out loud about this, about where would you draw the line of fan engagement and free fan marketing? Is there a line to draw?
Yeah. Um, I think there's a fine line, pun intended. um, I think again, at the end of the day, it's really just about providing opportunity. So if you have fans that are doing this just out of passion, out of the good of their hearts, because they care about this artist, they're passionate about this music, um, it's just about like if they're putting in this labor and pushing sales and streams and creating this user generated content for you, um, but you're not like opening up your doors to them to do fan engagement projects or to hire them for job opportunities, then it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, what's the point? Like your consumer is your most powerful asset. So like why wouldn't you want them sitting in the room with you? Why wouldn't you want to listen to them and implement their ideas and feedback? So I think it's just about providing that opportunity, because if you have these young people that are doing this great work and wanting to go into this field, why aren't you letting them kind of have that breakthrough?
Yeah, and thinking about like street teams, I know when I was in high school, I think, Fueled by Ramen was like big on like join our street team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about that now. Like, I definitely probably could have gone further with it and like attempted more, done more, like interacted more with whoever was running it at the
Mhm.
time. So it could be biased by me saying this, is just like me running around my city throwing up free posters that they sent
Mhm.
me in every Hot Topic, in every Spencer's, in every street corner, you know,
Right.
Like, where would you draw that line of like, that would be almost like intern work,
Right.
you know? So I'm just kind of curious about that and how that, you know, for smaller bands, artists, it's definitely a different concept, I would say. And, you know, if you love, you know, the Somerset and they send me posters, of course I want to support them. They're a smaller band, like, let me throw them up everywhere. But, like, you know, I don't know if Halsey has a street team or, you know, Taylor Swift obviously doesn't have a street team, but, like, naturally she does. And I'm just like, there's such a weird, like, in my opinion, like where do I draw the line of like being a fan, especially like thinking about younger fans is like if they're going to spend 20 hours a week at age 13 doing this, like
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's going to pay off in the end because they're going to have all of these
Right.
transferable skills that we talked about. But where is that, like, is that free labor? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it essentially is an unpaid internship, but I think the
yeah.
cool thing about that is like they created that for themselves. Like this wasn't a role that they applied for. This is something that they saw an opportunity for and took
Mm-hmm.
action with, and it shows initiative. So I think when they're older and they're actually applying to internships and jobs, they can put this on their resume and say, I created this role for myself. I was on this street team. I did XYZ organizing online and had these accounts with these numbers. So I think it's really just important, and why I love having these conversations, to have these young women and people thinking about these things now so they know
Mm-hmm.
how to market themselves when they are applying for these future internships and jobs, because I don't want them to think that this is just like, it is just fun and like
Yeah.
I'm glad they're having fun doing it, but these are very important things that will help them. Like this
Right.
isn't something to not include on your resume because it's huge.
Yeah. I just was thinking about that as I like read that question because I wrote those questions obviously a few days ago, and I
Yeah.
was like, I was a part of the Fueled by Ramen Street team. Like, what did I do? Like, like, like
No,
did
yeah.
I force? It was just like weird. So I'm like very curious. I haven't seen as many these days, and I don't know if
Mhm.
that's because of the rise of social media,
I think
and
so.
not, you know, as much of a need to do it. But I know that like there's still people out there doing it and like making it and like putting posters somewhere.
Yeah.
So I was just like very curious about that, your response to that. Absolutely. And thinking about all the bands you've been a fan of, have been, you know, following for years, is there one, maybe not One Direction, maybe not Harry Styles, that you think has done it perfectly in regards to
Mm.
fan engagement?
I feel like the main is a really good
Yeah.
example. I think the main consistently for like what, like 20 years now. I don't know how long it's been. Like they've just
That makes me
always
feel
done.
old. It's I think it's I don't know the exact number. I want to say it's almost 13.
That's crazy.
No.
Yeah, so like over a decade at least, like they've built a festival for fans. So I think it's just really cool that they consistently do this, and like they do free meet and greets because they don't believe that you should pay to meet your favorite artist. They'll do like free shows, and like I think it's just like a really great like community engagement process that they've created for themselves. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's others that come to mind, but I think the main's a really good one.
They're absolutely who I think about every time, and for being a fan of them for so long, and not even to like get into the content of their music, but like they've grown with me, and
Mm,
you know during my like you know like hips like very emo like hipster
yeah,
phases, like they were there and they were still accessible. They were the same people. They were as genuine as they have been, and seeing them now, it's like, I mean, I don't have like a personal relationship with any of them, but like it still feels like I'm like meeting old
right,
friends, and
100%.
it's so unique to have that. And I think that that should speak to a lot of like artists wanting to get their start, like you said earlier, is like that boundary of like very accessible versus like not accessible at all.
Mhm.
How do you think the next generation of fans, fangirls, stans, standum, who whatever the name will be next, how do you think they should approach, you know, number one, their fan culture, and then also taking that seriously as an adult? Does that make
Yeah.
Sorry.
Um, you're so fine. I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I'll always say it, but fangirls are the future. And so I think as long as that they know that and they understand that they wield this power and that they're very capable, they're very intelligent, and they're very creative, that they'll just continue to build this wheel and eventually just take over the world and whatever they're doing, whether it is music, whether it is a different industry, but just for them to understand that like what you have going right now is so important.
So I'd like to introduce Jaime from Fantaban. Fantaban is an entertainment company that specializes in fan engagement and understanding a fan base's needs. They are encouraging and educating fans every day to elevate their fan knowledge and use it as transferable skills. They are really bridging the gap between connecting fans all over the world and all over the hyperspace. So hi Jaime, how are you?
Good, how are you? I hope you are having a good Friday so far.
I am. I'm talking to you. I love talking all things fans, so I'm having a great day.
Me too. It's all I talk about. So again, at least somebody is recording it this time.
Somebody's listening as I go on a tangent again.
Yep, I love it. It's literally all I talk about. But I'm excited to dive deeper with you.
Yeah, so kind of just to get us started, and for those who don't know what Fantaban is, can you kind of give just kind of like an elevator pitch of who you are and how it got started?
Yeah, so for me personally, I went to college at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York. I studied pre-law. That was never the plan, but, when push came to shove, I understood how much debt I would be in if I went to the music programs I got into, just, the reality of it. And I was lucky enough to get into the industry through hard work and also amazing supervisors who were fangirls first and foremost. So I started to open my mouth and talk about fan feedback and opinions because my only prereq was being a fan. And within these internships over at Atlantic, Republic, and Sony, they would ask us what are fans thinking. There is no one answer, so I started to bring fans in and have them give their opinions and their ideas and their perspectives, which are so valuable. And from there, it just kind of grew to be what it is today. So, Fantaban today is, like you said, an entertainment company that focuses on understanding fans outside of the demographics of age, gender, and location, because there is so much more to an audience than that. And we have 3 different sectors. So, our brand, the educational side, and also the artist services, where we work alongside artists to really get to know their fan bases and cater to them in a way that makes a good campaign great. So, that's our overall.
That was so well said. How many times have you said that?
Honestly, I will tell you that I say it a lot, clearly, but it has evolved so much in the past year and a half that it absolutely has changed. At one point, Fantaban held all 3 of those sectors that I talked about underneath our one umbrella, but I will tease the fact that we are going to be announcing what our artist services branch is going to be called and our 2 new amazing co-founders that we're bringing on there. So, I've learned that each sector deserves its own time, its own, precision and thought, because there's been so much we've learned about. For example, the educational side, the lack of international education surrounding the music industry did not set out to do that at all, but we just see the problem and now we want to help. So it's been a crazy time.
Absolutely. And how did you kind of so what is your, number one, what is your title at Fantaban? And then also how you got involved in this type of stuff, because I know you worked at these previous companies, but it's like, how do you take that step into being where we are today?
Yeah. Oh, lots of steps. I would call it way more than one step. But I am the founder and CEO of Fantaban currently. I really only had background as being a fan and also as an individual. I often say Jaime the CEO and Jaime the person, but really it's one thing now. I am the most professional person I can be. I know that I have to be even more professional just because, the stigma is placed upon women who are fans and all that good stuff that we can get into. But I saw these labels that I would not trade my experience for the world working at. I often look back and I'm confused. I'm like, how did I get here? But I know it's through hard work and people who helped me. But I didn't see anybody who was defining fan engagement in the way that I was. And I kind of just took the leap of faith to define it for myself and create a company. And I don't know if it was the universe or my persona or my, just what I enjoy, but I was able to attract people with like-minded personalities, and they didn't even realize that fan engagement was what they wanted to do. They always knew that's what they wanted to do, but they didn't have a name for it because there's only a few individuals in the industry who have done it. And I saw those blueprints as a business, and I said, okay, if anyone's going to do it, why not me? And you have the many arguments people like to make, why not me? You're young, this, that, and the other thing, but if not me, then who? And I'm very confident in what I know, and I lean on the team for what I don't, and I'm really excited to continue to grow.
Absolutely, and I've been watching you guys for. I think I found you guys on TikTok mid isolation.
I love it.
I think I think that everything I've looked up and everything that I've followed over the last 6 to 8 months, I don't know. Time is irrelevant. This last year,
yeah, it's a blur.
Yeah. So over this last course of time, is just looking back, when I wanted to do all of these things in the music industry, and I'm going to college for this one thing, I have passions in another thing, and all of these thoughts are happening even in high school. At that is there was no guiding light, there was no kind of spotlight on oh, actually this is a thing, you can take this seriously, you don't have to think of this as oh, this is just high school me. So I just applaud you guys so much on doing that right now, especially with this last year. In isolation, this gave so many people an opportunity to hone in on what they want to do, or hone in into their likes, their dislikes. So I just want to applaud you guys for that, number one.
Thank you. I mean, that means the most. We could not be where we are today without every amazing street team member, internal team, you name it. People have been with us and left. It's been a crazy time, but it's those people's goals and personalities and just their hard work that make up our community. And, regardless of what we call ourselves, it's the people who change the game for us.
Absolutely. And the title Fangirl has such a negative connotation in so many places, which I think is completely unfair, which I'm sure you could agree to.
Oh, yep. I could definitely speak to that for a whole hour and a half.
And what would you define a 2021 fangirl as?
I would define them as smart. I'm big into these subcategories, as you know, it's what my whole entire company is based off of, and I know it's okay that not every fangirl wants to be a professional, but the ones who do, they should not be stigmatized off of a blanket statement. I define the fangirl as strategic in whatever way they want to use their knowledge, whether that's just to be someone who's supporting their favorite artist or someone who wants to apply it to their industry of choice. I mean, there's a lot you can take from fandom and apply it in every single sector of this, not only industry, but any industry, because most jobs you have, you're dealing with an audience, whoever that may be. So there's a lot to learn. So I would define fangirls as strong, intelligent, strategic. They think a lot about a lot. So as I'm sure you know. And definitely in 2021, it's the year of the fan. We've been saying that. And I've also been thinking, what do we call 2022 then? But this was the year that people decided that fangirl wasn't a dirty word. I mean, prior to the pandemic, nobody was saying that they were a fan, take out even fangirl, that they were a fan in these meetings. In fact, you were looked at like you were crazy. And I know that from firsthand experience. Even today as an entrepreneur, I'm proud to be a fangirl, and I can get into, the different struggles and victories I've had, because not everybody is going to understand that definition, and they'll try to define it for you, but you got to just have a mind of your own and stick to that.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at, One Direction is such a prime example right now for me, at least, just because it's so relevant to me, and
so relevant. It inspired so many of us to work in the industry, and now people aren't afraid to say it.
Absolutely. No, yeah, Natalie and I were just saying that, when I went to college, it was 2015, my freshman year, I was sitting next to one of my now best friends, and I just kind of said in passing, I was like, yeah, I like One Direction, and she was like, yeah, me too. But now, I would loud and proud say that, and
everyone is. It's we're now celebrating like 10 years of having to suppress our fangirl energy because people decided it wasn't cool. And now it's cool. And now people who were like, oh, you have Twitter friends? They're screaming from the rooftop who they love. And it's just so ironic. And it's just like you have to stick with what you love. I mean, Fantaban was around. If you go, I mean, we archived a lot. But if you've been with us like long before fan engagement was a buzzword, and then it started picking up, and I can guarantee you we're going to be here long after it's a buzzword when people don't really love saying, or, you know, it's kind of outdated, or not even outdated, like it's not the fresh news that, oh, fan engagement, but I do compare it very much to streaming, to where, you know, you can sit there with your CDs and your vinyls, which are often very cool, but if you don't acknowledge that you can't survive in this industry without streaming, you're not going to succeed. Same thing with fan engagement. You are not going to be able to succeed in this industry if you do not use fan engagement for what it really can be, and also acknowledge your fans, because they are not accepting anything less anymore, which is great.
And looking at kind of obviously larger artists like Lizzo, One Direction, they are signed with these larger labels, and then if you take a look at smaller labels, like I'm specifically thinking about Fueled by Ramen, not that they're as large as they used to be in like my emo days, but like they have things like street teams, which I think look a little different to what your personal street team looks like, so I'm curious of your thoughts and reaction, but where would you draw the line, not you specifically, the music industry, draw the line between fan engagement and then also free fan marketing and like abusing free marketing?
Absolutely. So for me, in my own personal experiences, street teams is how I learned most and set the foundation for my career, and I wish that someone had told me sooner that I could have put these experiences on my resume, and then I absolutely decided that I had to once I got into these labels and I saw I was doing similar work that I did as a fan, whether I was on a street team or not. I would say it's a hard one because there's no such thing as free work. You know, for me, the invaluable, like the ability to put something on my resume was everything to me. But I would say the line is kind of drawn when you see that that job is somebody's in the label, or somebody's getting paid to do what you do. So for our street team, our main goal is to connect each other, connect everyone on the street team for ideal, you know, professional opportunities. Maybe there's someone who works at Warner who sees somebody who has been crushing it on our street team and really networking both laterally and, you know, upwards. Also, we want to be able to provide, for me at least, I have so many people who reach out and are like, do you know so-and-so's hiring? Do you know anyone? Like, we need concert photographers, X, Y, and Z. So the goal is for us to be able to get these fans opportunities to be paid. And also, when we show up in numbers for focus groups or market research, we then show how powerful we can be and then get opportunities to pay fans in tandem. So if you take Fantaban out of it and you're talking about a street team that is saying promote your favorite artist X, Y, and Z, I would definitely say no one could define that line for you except for you. You have to, like I said earlier, trust your gut, and if you feel that your work is valuable enough to speak up, because it's always a no until it's a yes, and the worst that's going to happen is they outline the next steps for you to get to that point. And if they don't, then you're not in the right work environment. So also you have to, you know, realize who you're working with. For us, I'm so immensely grateful that our street team knows that we're a startup, and I would literally give my right arm for anyone on there, and that we do everything we can. But, you know, as we grow as a company and we make more income and we get these opportunities that are, again, all credited to the hard work of the people on our street team, we take care of our own. So it's definitely a goal in mind, and I just encourage anyone to trust their gut and make sure that nobody else is defining their experiences for them, and that they're just not taking every opportunity to take it. In the beginning, that's great, but also make sure that you're pursuing things that make you happy and that are going to get you to where you want to go.
That's very well said, and
thank you. You could also live your dream job and be stressed. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. It's just the passion that keeps you going.
100. Oh, I feel that one.
I wish I could pull that on an actual billboard because, people tend to also be like, oh, you must be like, yeah, I'm so happy and I'm here to hype up everyone all day. But I've seen executives live the job that they worked their whole life to get towards and still be stressed. So I encourage the stress and I bring it along the journey with me because, again, it pushes you to be your best self and also appreciate the win so much more.
Yeah, and so looking at a street team, like, say for just a very large label, not including your guys' street team because I think the morals of both are very different.
Yeah.
Where is the next step? So if you're a fan, and so say I'm 12 and back in the Fueled by Ramen street team, and I've put posters at every Hot Topic in my area and every street corner in Washington, D.C., and everything that I've attempted to and begged my mom to drop me off and, let me do these things.
Oh, yeah.
And you're young, you can't get paid, you technically, really can't get paid for this stuff because
legally.
Labor laws.
Yeah.
So, where is the next steps, do you think, for people, looking forward to their personal futures is from that step? Or, that was very weirdly worded, but...
No, but I understood everything you said. So, let's say that's you, and I'm talking to 12-year-old you who just had a long day going to every Hot Topic. We've all very much been there. I would say... You get compensated for your time either in money, expertise, or knowledge. So, whatever that would be, I would make sure that, okay, I did all these great things. Talk to the point person that helped me do all these things and ask them how I can transfer those skills into any other job that I take on. I would ask them how to write that on my resume properly. That would encourage employers to give me other opportunities because that's often a roadblock. I feel that a lot of younger people don't know how to word it properly, and of course our street team gives them the opportunities to do that in the way that we see, beneficial. But I remember, you're doing all these skills, but you don't have a name for it, or you don't have a sentence for it, and you're not sure how to properly get the point across that this is valuable on your resume. So that's a skill set within itself. And also, for me at least, I know a lot of people think this question is vague in interviews, but I loved to ask people that I was working with about their careers and just let them talk and then try to find myself within their stories. And that was even harder for someone who wanted to go towards fan engagement because there was no name for fan engagement. It wasn't like, I want to be in A&R, I want to be in marketing. Yeah. Let me talk to people who are in those departments. I was talking to anybody who was willing to, express their interests or talk to me about their careers, and I tried to find myself in them. So that is something that I feel is very much valuable because you can learn what you love and what you hate, and both are very much equally as important. And I've learned a lot of lessons from all my supervisors that they've set me up for success. So when I go through similar situations, I know that's wrong, that's right, this I have to navigate myself, just because there's a lot of things that you don't know in this industry until you get into it. And, all we can do is better pay that forward to the fans who are coming in.
Yeah. And looking at, so we talked about large-scale artists, but smaller artists, do you think that it is more essential to be including fan engagement at a smaller scale or a larger scale?
I think neither. I think they're both equally important depending on who you are as a fan and also who the artist is. There's a lot you can learn from both. For me personally, I learned a lot just because, you are your experiences, and in the beginning working at these labels, I had the opportunity to work on both. So I was working, obviously, learning from Lizzo, but also from, smaller artists that I did mock marketing campaigns for, Josie Dunn and Pink Sweats before he blew up. In some capacity. In me, I was a massive Pink Sweats fan just because I was, a publishing person at that time. I loved, looking up who wrote songs, so I was so excited to work across that stuff. But I would say there are different lessons you can learn. And at least for me, when I was a fan of a smaller artist and then they became One Direction, you kind of feel territorial over it. And I see it a lot right now with Justin Bieber fans that like there's this new wave of Justin Bieber fans, and a lot of the older ones were like, "You're not even born" when he was first releasing music. But I think that this pandemic caused a lot of camaraderie and like let's come together to help this artist, and there's a lot of learning from each other, whether that's like a newer artist. Like I think a big one right now is Greta Van Fleet. I don't know if it's just my TikTok page, but they're massive on there. Yeah, they're massive on there. So yeah, that's a smaller artist, and like fans want to get in there sooner so that they can grow with them and they see their potential. So there's a lot to learn there. But also, if you start, standing Justin Bieber tomorrow, there's also a lot to learn there. So I don't know. That doesn't answer your question. I think both are beneficial.
No, I absolutely, and I think that kind of was a trick question, is because I personally think that, you can probably attest to this too, is that that's the best way to grow organically as fans, and you can take a band from the smallest town in, I don't know, Kansas, and if there's a large fan group there, it doesn't matter. Like, they could be unsigned, unmanaged, all of these things, but those people will take them further than they ever thought they would. And kind of curious of how do you think smaller artists would benefit from things like Fantaban and other groups and organizations that are heavily influenced and ran by fans themselves?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing they could learn from that is getting to know their audience outside of the reasons as why do you like me for my music. So there's many reasons, whether we take the time to internally reflect or not, as to why we love our favorite artists. It can be anything from as little as we like the way they dress to we like the way that they, stand up for like activism and how, whatever that may be. And then meet in the middle for the kind of food they review. For example, Lord's onion ring account. Like, where does that fall into age, gender, and location? So not only can smaller artists get to know themselves better and then expand that way outside of their music, it doesn't really matter which comes first, your music or your personality. One can argue it's a little harder to come in after your personality is already a social persona. Like, for example, TikTokers trying to become artists. But as long as you're authentic and as long as you're like transparent about what you like in whatever capacity that is, you don't have to share every single detail about yourself. Just whatever you are sharing, it's authentic and true to yourself and your career and your yourself as a person. There's a lot to learn from your fans, because I learn from the people who come to Fantaban and want to work with us, like, oh, they actually love this, this, and that, and this is where they came from, and they interact on Discord. We should learn about Discord, like, and then so it turns out, oh, a client needs us to build a Discord server. Like, you learn as much from your audience as you do from yourself, and I think both need to be taken into consideration.
I'm really glad you brought up Discord, because in the last year that has been like a huge like resurgence of that, and I've seen it mostly in like the pop punk community and like alt rock, which is interesting. I don't know if that has to do with the fan base of being like heavier on the male side or whatever that looks like. I have no idea. I'm just speaking out of like what I just assume, but
and what you see.
Right, and I talked to the band Young Culture, who's a smaller band from Albany, New York. They have a whole thing where they go on Twitch on Sundays, and they do a culture club chat, and then they have a Discord, and Dan, who's former Real Friends, now he has Rationale, he also has a Discord and does the same thing of all the Twitch accounts, and it kind of begs the question, I guess that's probably not the best side of music that would probably interact with us more, but where would you draw the line for fans where it's like, or even artists, of fan engagement versus friendship? Is there a line to draw? Where would you draw it? And kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, so often in fan engagement, I feel like if I don't have a specific artist I'm talking about, I would have to kind of put myself in an example or like a headspace, because it's different for everyone. Like,
right.
You see these smaller artists become friends with their fan base, but at the end of the day, like, they are the artists, they do have a job, they do have to be in charge, so to speak. It's very similar to a work friend relationship. Like, I love every single person on my team as a friend so much, but I'm hyper aware that I, at the end of the day, have to make hard decisions, and I'm also the boss. Back to kind of what I said, like, Jamie the CEO versus Jamie the person, and they get blended as your career goes on, no matter what you're doing. So again, very different from being an artist. But I would say it depends on what you're comfortable with. Like some artists don't even like engaging with their fans online. Some would love to get on a Zoom with 100 of them. Like when I think it's really great to see like people like Ed Sheeran for his album rollout recently. He was hopping on Zoom rooms with random links on Zoom that were thrown on Twitter. One, him being around for a long time, he know that is a dangerous game to play. Two, he's Ed Sheeran. He doesn't need to do that, but he is, and he's seeing his fan engagement and acknowledging it that he wants to not only just succeed, but grow and expand as a person, because you see a lot of these artists just get comfortable, and industry executives, like, it's really easy for anyone as a person to get comfortable. So you pick and choose what hat you're kind of wearing at what time. I think the line, again, I'm just giving you such vague answers. The line is different for everyone, but I think it's not really even up to the artist. It's up to the fan to draw the line. Because if you want to be a professional in the music industry, you absolutely have to draw a line for yourself. But if you don't, hey, do what you got to do. Get to the front of the barricade. Do whatever you got to do. But unfortunately, there are these stigmas that are placed on us, and we're actively in the process of breaking them. So you do have to draw the line for yourself if you want to be a professional. And even if you're the most professional person in a room, if you are a fangirl, I will tell you from experience, you have to go above and beyond to unfortunately prove it to these people. But there are some people who are never going to get it. If you're the first there, the last to leave, and that's okay. As long as you know at the end of the day that you're drawing every line, being the best you can be, learning every day. That's the line I draw for myself. I cannot say enough, do not let anybody else define what it means to be a fan or a fan turned professional for you, because from me to you it's different. From every single person it's different, and it might be similar, but definitely can not stress enough to like draw your own lines, be your own person, and feel whatever is authentic to you.
Yeah, and I think I touched on this a little bit before, but like your organization just like makes people feel like me feel seen, and
exactly.
Me being 24 is like, nobody, and like, because I work in, heavily male dominated, it's like, it's still, kind of taboo, and
let them call me. I'll tell them.
I mean, even like in the music industry is like, I'll go to a show and I'm, shooting for the podcast to cover, whatever, or shooting for this, shooting for that. It's still like, I'm a woman, there are 6 men shooting the pit around me, and it's like, how did we end up here? And
exactly.
There's so many moments for me, very small, minuscule, and, it's just, so people like you, people who are in your organization and, keep up and are able to communicate to larger scale people, is just like makes people feel like me feel seen, which is amazing.
Well, you're doing the same work for us. Like, we wouldn't have a platform, or we wouldn't have any momentum if people didn't stand up and say that they were also feeling what we felt and seeing what we see, and they identify with us, because it is a scary thing to do alone, for sure, and I know that because I'm going back to like 15-year-old me that would have killed for Fantaban. If I saw Fantaban at 15, I probably would have beat Mark Zuckerberg for the #1 spot as like self-claimed CEO and billionaire.
Yeah.
Like I would have been light years ahead, and I am just so glad to provide that for people now, because who is anybody else to, define what you want to be? Not to discredit all the success of, male and female, or however you identify, because, all are important. Just like, there's no reason to shoot anybody down just because they don't do the things that you do, or do things the way that you do. And there's a lot to learn from these industry professionals who've been around. Yes, of course. I would be so stupid to not acknowledge that. I listen to every podcast. I read every book. I want to learn. I have such a hunger to learn. But at the same time, they have so much to learn from the people who are coming up. And I'm not even talking about myself. I'm talking about the 15-year-olds to whatever age you are, who are just coming into this industry at any aspect, and they have this fresh perspective that is so needed because they set the tone of the industry. They are the consumer. We are the consumers. And again, I try not to put age on it because you can be 40 years old coming into this industry and you're not jaded by it. You need that renewal of like passion and all that stuff. I mean, I see it with people I work with. I experience it. If I don't go talk to a street team member at least once a day, well, no, that's a lot. But I interact with the street team once a day. That's what keeps me going, keeps me fresh, keeps me what do I need to learn. And as a consumer myself, it's so important to go on TikTok, to go on Twitter, to whatever it may be, and just be a fan for a second because, you know, the professional side takes up a lot of your time. So I have my own rituals that keep me in my fan, you know, headspace.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about your street team, and I know you guys did just start street team sessions very recently, almost a week ago.
Oh my gosh, yes, I'm so excited for that.
So can you kind of talk about street team sessions and then also different, I guess, opportunities and roles that members on your street team have that kind of make you guys unique in the way that you're giving these fans opportunities? And, you know, obviously you mentioned earlier networking was a big one.
Yeah, so calling our street team a street team was probably the best marketing thing we could have ever done because we do so much more than a regular street team that people are kind of like accustomed to. But street team sessions is a project that's a long time coming. We just have so many amazing individuals, for lack of better terms. Like, they are so amazing, whose stories I've gotten to know as an individual and everyone on our team has gotten to know, that we just want to give them another platform to voice their opinions, tell their stories, tell their perspectives, and really just, you know, put it all out there. Because when you put it out there, again, for individuals who don't have people supporting each other, it's scary. But when you put your ideas out there, you can succeed in ways that you cannot even imagine. Like, if I had not opened my mouth about that Lizzo situation, I have no idea if I would have been invited back to Atlantic Records. I've had amazing supervisors, so probably would have still believed in me, and I would have given me other opportunities to voice my opinion. But if they didn't set me up for success, I would be nowhere. And they had no obligation to help me. So we're just trying to do as many things as possible to give them that platform to do things they already are great at. Because put a fan in a room with someone who doesn't respect them, they're going to get nowhere. If I'm like, hey, no, their experience is valuable, you need to listen to them because I've already, you know, gotten to a point in my career where I can get into these doors. If I don't pay it back, who am I? Because I wouldn't be here if no one paid it back for me. So that is street team sessions, and we're going to have all our exciting street team members who feel comfortable talking on a podcast forum. We also have a massive international fan base, so we're working on getting some hosts in line in different languages because that would absolutely not, we would not be diverse enough if we didn't. So that's really exciting. And then our street team as a whole, we do workshops internally, our workshops, we have our podcast, we have our monthly street team, we have panelists come speak once a month, and if you know, we have focus groups. If you attend it all, you get the participation to be put in a raffle to meet with our one-on-one. So we have a lot of different aspects going, and internally we have street team managers, we have admins, then you can become an intern. But our goal is to bring outside opportunities to light because I had nowhere to look. In college, I had no idea. I went to a college where people wanted to be in the FBI. That's why, and that's great. And I learned a lot. But that's never what I wanted to do. But I had to kind of make the program and make the school work for me because I couldn't afford other ones. And I'm learning that there are a lot of other people who have that, whether it's they can't afford it, their parents don't see the vision, which is okay. And maybe in their, you know, territory in the world where they're at, there's not a lot of programs, so it's like they accept 25 people a year. There's nowhere to look if you don't have a guiding mentor or shining light or whatever you want to call it. So we bring those opportunities to the table, and through our personal connections, through what we see, through having our finger on the pulse of the industry, we're like, hey guys, you can learn, like there's jobs out there, because the hardest part about the music industry is getting in. And once you're in, you learn about it. So, and I do want to say, if you're a fan, you're already in. So use that to your leverage.
That's amazing. I love that you said if you're a fan, you're already in, because you've already, put
I
yourself
wish I
in this
knew.
culture. Yeah, literally.
I can't
same.
sit and regret all day, but I will say I wish I knew back in the day what I know now. And I say that, and I'm sure there's things 10 years from now, 1 year from now, a week from now that I wish I knew. But all you can do is try to learn from other people, from podcasts, from books, from street teams, from LinkedIn. And if you have that hunger to learn, you're always going to be 10 steps ahead. I know imposter syndrome is a big thing in this industry. And as a fangirl, or, women, we, in general, people will make you feel like you're not supposed to be in that room. But you just have to constantly remind yourself that you are meant to be there.
How many people do you guys have total right now?
Yeah, so we have, I think it's right about 1,003 at the moment, and
holy shit.
yeah, my thoughts exactly. In 29 plus countries, and we've had literally like 6,000 applications, and we can let them all in and be like, we have 7,000 people on our street team, but it would not mean something if I didn't actually get to know half of the people on the street team and have our street team members get to know the other half. Because when people are calling me for referrals or for opportunities, I want to make sure I'm not just throwing people in a room, I'm preparing them. So the capacity, and we have such a personable approach that we do want to automate a bit of it soon, which we do have exciting stuff coming up. But yeah, the foundation of this street team has been everything, and I wouldn't want to spend the past year and a half any other way, just putting people in and then going into meetings and be like, we have 6,000 to 7,000 people. Like, we started the street team with such good intentions that I quite literally had no idea the life of its own that it would take on. We had like 30 people in the beginning, and I loved every second of it. So it's been a great time.
And just to highlight the fact that you guys really started in 2019, and it's not, I'm sure all of everybody's cumulative experience has gone way beyond that. You've talked about that, but just this central organization is not old, and which is an amazing feat for you guys and your entire team and your entire street team.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have to think, when did we launch the street team publicly? Maybe it started to pick up momentum in January when one of our TikToks went out. Yeah. And also, to even accredit how soon this is, I don't know for you, but for me, I will only speak for myself. I always wanted to do fan engagement. I had the same hunger in me and that feeling in my gut, but I didn't have a word. I did not have a word to define it. So I've been doing this for so long. As you know, we all have. 2019 was the day Fantaban, the words came out of my mouth when I was sitting in Atlantic Records radio department, and my boss Leslie at the time was like, do it. No concern, no oh, I don't know, you're in over your head. She's like, do it. Why not? I was like, oh, okay, what the heck does this mean? And since then, it's taken on such a life of its own, and we publicly launched in June of 2020. And when I mean publicly launched, I had team members. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just me doing all this market research and, giving my opinion. I started to bring in other people's opinions, and then the ball just kept rolling so much that we've been able to meet people who I could not, I can say this all day, I could not do my job alone. Every single person on our internal team is so important to our success, and also the dedication of our community, whether you're a follower, you told your friend about it, you saw us on LinkedIn, or you're a street team member or manager, every single one of those contributions is so crucial. Even this, you reaching out to want to talk to me is so crucial, because maybe somebody listens to your podcast, joins our street team, and gets a job they didn't even know was possible, or learns something that changes their career. It's just, you can never really plan how it goes, and you just got to be willing to put the work in. If you would have told me that this pandemic would happen, if you would have told anyone this pandemic would happen, I would have been very confused, and of course so much devastation has happened, but it gave the music industry an opportunity to realize the worth of fans, online culture, and they would not have survived the pandemic without either.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to bring in this quote that I have from Valley. So basically I asked them, fan engagement, in my opinion, has proven to be the most effective ways to organically grow. You can see that in artists like 21 Pilots, The Maine, Halsey, Taylor Swift, and so many others, smaller and larger. And they use very personal forms of fan engagement. You've seen Taylor Swift invite people to her house, and 21 Pilots had their own street team that formed and has evolved into such a great thing. In their stages of growth, what has been the thing that's resonated most with their fans?
Live shows, meeting people after our shows has been like the strongest growth. That and like, I guess, engaging with people on social media over the pandemic and giving the fans kind of like positive escapism, because we realized that a lot of our, like, the world doesn't need our depressing lyrics right now, you know what I mean? Like, they need positivity, like they need 1999 and they need tempo and they need, oh shit, like that's what the world needs right now. You don't want to be fucking sitting at home listening to music that is like has kind of lyrics that are sad right now. Like you kind of need that like uplifting thing. At least like that's what we were noticing, and I think that's why also 1999 did so well, is like it's dreaming about this time of like, let's go back to living where we're not stuck on our phone and this and that. So like I think giving people what they need, almost, I know that's not really fan engagement necessarily, but I think it is like a part, it's something that sparks fan engagement. So I think that's really important, is like giving the people what they need, and then from there engaging with them and replying to their comments, and like doing personal, like every time someone messages us for like a birthday video for their friend, like we try and do it. Like we get a lot of messages, but if we see it and if we respond to it, like we're putting it in our calendar to try and do it, and like just really being very personal with our fans without like, crossing any boundaries, or like, chatting with them too much, or like every single day type of thing, because sometimes that breaks the barrier a little bit. But just like being there, making them feel like Valley as a collective is like there for them musically and emotionally. Exactly. And stuff.
I feel like, to add to that, you said one thing. The world doesn't need another mysterious band. The world doesn't need like another like, I don't know. I guess 1975 are kind of mysterious. I don't think they're quite as accessible as. Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like just being accessible and talking about the things that you want to talk about and that you believe in, and just trying to help move the needle on progress, and just talking about very current, not just world issues, but like personal stuff, creates relatability with people. And I think that's been a huge thing for us. We've just been super genuine, I hope, and just been really open. And I think that's helped a lot with fan engagement.
Yeah.
So they bring up a lot of great points that I very much appreciate.
Yeah, I have a lot.
Feel free to just rip. I'm ready.
The first thing I want to say is, like, maybe he doesn't even realize he's doing fan engagement, but he's recognizing multiple times in that clip what the fans need right now, rather than just throwing things at a wall and praying it sticks. Not only does he see, he validates, and also takes action steps towards what they're doing based off of the needs of the fans. And it's not about giving them, like he said, like everything they ask for, like, oh, I want all these birthday videos. It's about validating them, taking your own personal insight as an artist or the artist team. So he set that own boundary for himself, that, let's not chat with them every day, but let's try to do everything we can. Their own personal boundary, and taking their personal insight about the industry, what the fans are saying, and creating something that maybe they didn't even know they needed, or the purpose and the intention of it is both strategic for industry norms and trends and so on, but also extremely authentic to themselves. So I commend them on that, and on the boundaries. It's great to see that you're drawing them as artists, just because it's needed. Some artists just like, I'm gonna do everything and anything does not work for everyone. It's such a blanket statement, and that's the opposite of what we're trying to do at Fantaban. We want to find what works for you. We want to find, and it's crazy that some artists actually don't know how to define that. Yeah. because they haven't tried it yet. So I commend them for defining that and for really listening to their fans and making them feel seen in ways that are authentic and, credible to them.
When I got that answer from them, I was like, this is why I love you guys, because
they get it.
They get it, yeah. And I mean, you can see that. I don't know how long you've been following them, but since the last year, that with their kind of blow up on TikTok and everything like that, is like they're the same band that I listened to 2 years ago. It's like they've kept that genuity, they've kept the authenticity, and like all of these things while still remaining relevant, growing, and taking what they already know and inserting it elsewhere. And I love them. I just love this clip.
Yeah, that was definitely a great tie-in as well, because of course I can sit here all day and I've met with tons of artists, but like I am not an artist. So to give fans the insight and the opportunity to hear what an artist is actually thinking in terms of how they work and how they cater to their audience, it's definitely a unique perspective people don't always talk about. Yeah. I mean, I always loved interviews like that. I would watch the Zach Sang show all the time to kind of want to hear about the artist process, but I just could not commend them more. I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing it with me.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, I mean, that's 99% of the reason I started this podcast is that, like, I feel like when I watched band interviews growing up, they were asking the questions that I didn't want to hear. And
exactly.
When I was like, what am I going to do? And like, how do you continue to ask new questions? And I think that each artist has a different story to tell, and they have different fans, and being able to find the things that nobody's going to ask them, and like, like I still get nervous. I'm just like, maybe I've been asked this question 1,000 times, and it's just like, but like as a fan and knowing that, and knowing like what I've learned of like being on like the outskirts of the industry with like photography and like other publications, is like, no, like I am confident that I'm asking them questions that I want to hear, and I'm not
as you should.
And like, I don't care. Like, I care what their favorite color is, but like I don't care. Like, let's talk about like the things that like as a fan I know that in your music video you have this, and why is that? Like, why is that a tie-in? Like, I pay attention to the Easter eggs, so other people do, and like, so that's why, like, I think including these conversations with you and people like you are so important to tie it all together and just really like make it something that people want to listen to as a fan.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that, just because like having other people value your opinion and also just value what you believe in, it's been a life-changing experience. Having other people believe in a dream that I had one day, and seeing that it was their dream as well, has been so inspiring. And like I said, is the literal reason why I do everything I do and why I work as hard as I do, because it's only going to create the collective opportunities to be higher and, allow people to have the confidence to say what they want to say that can potentially open up doors. There's no guarantees, there never have been, but there's definitely different groups of people who've been more empowered to share their, ideas or opinions throughout this industry. And you see, like, how did they get that far? It's because they were given the platform to share their ideas, while other people were, in a way, suppressed or made to feel as if their ideas and opinions weren't as valued. And as fans, that definitely has been said, even though, we've gotten to where we are because we hype each other up and we believe in ourselves, and camaraderie is a big thing when you're believing in each other's, you have the same dreams, like I just said, like you want one direction to get to where they want to go, and then you meet another person who has that same aspirations. It's just a little different now, and like we all want to get into the industry in that sector that they do, and it's been a great time seeing it grow, and I'm excited to see where it goes and be at the top of the wave.
Yeah, and so I end all of my artist interviews with the same question, so I'm going to form it to you and your organization, is that artists have the platform, organizations have the platform to make a mark on the world, whether smaller or larger. What is the mark that you and Fantaban want to make as a whole?
My mark is that I want to make every fan, alongside the artists and brands and teams and whoever we work with, feel seen, heard, and valued through the campaigns, whether they know that we're working with them or we're not. And the second side of that, because I do wear two caps on both the educational and the artist services, is that on the educational side, I want to allow for fans to realize all the hard work they've put in, and if they want to be professionals, like I said a million times and I will continue to say forever, they can be professionals, and to not let anybody else define that for them, and to give them the resources or just the pat on the back to allow them to do everything that they are already doing, that they are already capable of doing without us. We're just here to give them the helping hand.
Well, Jaime, Fantaban, thank you. Congratulations on everything you guys have worked on and are working on. I can't wait to follow along and see you guys grow and everything.
Well, thank you. We are so grateful for everyone, like people like yourself and your platform that allow us to say what we say all the time, and just, get it to more people, because who knows, maybe you have a listener that can really benefit from this, and maybe they just see one post and they feel empowered, or they join our street team, or they reach out, you name it. So I really also commend you for creating a platform, for a safe place for people to learn. I would not be where I am without podcasts and just people who offered up their knowledge like this. So thank you for doing so with every single person you have on, and I will continue to listen because I'm learning every day.
Thank you. So don't run away quite yet. We just